Hey guys, this is Tobias Onhout with the sophomore and junior section of the grade, coming to you with the activity section of this month's online seminar. Hope you're all doing well. And today I'm going to be talking about something that hopefully is pretty current for you, the prudent use of social media. So, prudent use of social media, what does it mean? I think, first of all, we should walk through the words and just define our terms before we dive into exactly what we're talking about here. So, I'm sure most of you guys know what social media is, but I think even at its most fundamental, we can break it down even further. Social, right, is an adjective describing a group of people, a collective, and it's something very authentic, it's human, it's about relationships. And media, and as a journalist, I kind of know a little bit about this, but for example, news media is something where the news is delivered to you, and hopefully that kind of gives it away. Media is a channel; it's a way of communicating. It's the ability to get information from one area to another, and especially for people to receive information. So social media, obviously, then is the channel by which we connect with each other, through which we interact in a natural way. We connect with people, but it's through a channel. It's not through direct human interaction. It's through some sort of medium. So you guys know the deal. I'm sure there are probably profiles that you have on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok nowadays, and these are all things that are social media platforms. And like I said, they involve a channel by which you connect with your friends, with social media influencers, these kind of famous people that become famous through social media because they're generating a lot of content, they're generating a lot of interactions. So it's a very social thing. What exactly does that mean? I think it's important to realize that based on the words, we can see that social media is a tool, right? It's a channel, it's a neutral thing. And that's where prudence comes in. And we talked about prudence a few months ago, and so I'm going to reiterate what exactly prudence is for you guys in case you're not familiar or you don't remember. Prudence is right reason in action. So with a neutral tool like social media, it can be used in a good way or a bad way. And that's where prudence comes in. And that's why we're having this talk. I think especially right now while you guys are home, you're not really sure, what the deal is with school and whatnot. You're working from home, you're probably taking a lot of classes online, you're not seeing your friends, you're probably interacting with them on social media. I'm interacting with you right now, talking to you through social media most likely. So social media is going to play a big role in your lives right now. And I think it's really good to talk about what exactly social media is and how to use it well, and so that we can kind of dive in and kind of make the most of our time here at home. So I walked through kind of some platforms, and before we go any further, I think it's good to point out that here at the grade, we don't have an official policy when it comes to social media. So I'm sure you guys, it depends on your background and your family, and that's totally fine. And we totally want you to kind of follow the directives of your parents, of your school, whatever kind of the rules are surrounding social media for each and every one of you. And that's totally okay. But we want to help kind of inform you and give you kind of a lot of different ideas about social media, just to kind of really give you the ability to understand what exactly this thing is and how to use it well. So with this in mind, let's talk about good and bad uses for social media, because I said prudence, right? Prudence is the way that we're going to sift through social media to figure out exactly what is good about it and what's bad about it. And it comes down to the fact that social media is a tool that thrives on our attention. It really drives us to use it. And I'm going to frame it in kind of a slightly negative way. Just because of the way it's designed, it works to kind of capture our attention. And you have a lot of people that are pouring a lot of money in a lot of these massive tech firms to kind of engineer platforms that are in some ways addictive. And so it's easy to kind of get sucked into social media without having much of an idea of what it's doing or how you're using it. So we have to take a step back and realize that before we go in, and realize that, there are kind of addictive measures to social media. And I think the overarching goal of this talk and this activity is that we want to be in control of social media and not have social media be in control of us. So let's go to the good and bad examples of using social media, because like I said, it depends on how we use it, and we want to be in control. So I think we have to go back to the definition and think about what social media is. At its best, it's going to drive human connection. And so what do I mean by that? Well, I think as you guys are probably getting to know right now and understanding and coming to terms with, social media is probably driving a lot of your connections with your friends. And that can be a good thing. And right now, it's especially good to be in touch with your friends and to let them know how you're doing and to talk to them and to communicate with them. And because friendship is one of the pillars of the grade, obviously, and we want you to be good friends with your friends around you. So I think social media at its best really helps to facilitate authentic human friendship. And it can be a great tool to do that because, yeah, you can meet new people, but also it's a great way to, for example, tell someone happy birthday. Facebook has a great tool where they remind you of your friends' birthdays, and you're able to go on their wall and write up happy birthday. Same thing with Snapchat, and yeah, it's a great tool which allows us to really deliver authentic human connection if we're mindful of it. So I think social media can also be a really great tool for school, and especially now for you guys because you're home. I remember in high school, now I'm not that removed from high school, but I think it's still a good example. I was in a class with 400 other guys, and we had a Facebook group that come finals time was the place to be because people were posting study guides, people were asking questions that everyone was kind of running reviews by each other. It was actually a really kind of organic, massive study group, and it really helped people facilitate information and helped guys prepare. And I remember after graduating or taking my last finals, I remember people being really thankful and being like, wow, that Facebook group really made the difference in terms of helping me study and helping me prepare for this test, because I felt like I was not only receiving a lot of good information, but I was in it with all of my classmates. Like, we were in it together. And so I think that's when I think of social media at its best, I think of things like that, where it really serves to drive and to further authentic human connection like that. And so right now, when you guys are home studying, working on projects, taking tests, I think take advantage of social media to connect with your classmates, to talk about potential upcoming assignments, be creative. I think it's a great tool that can be used in a proper way to really drive education forward. And that's probably what you're seeing right now. So I think we've walked through a couple examples of how social media is a good thing. So let's flip the script now and talk a little bit about how social media can be bad. And remember, I think we should take a step back when we're talking about good or bad and talk about control. And I think control is important here because social media at its worst can be in control of us and not in good ways. I mean, it can be addictive, but also I think it can really kind of cloud our judgment. And that's also how it can be in control, because we can make kind of silly decisions or make bad decisions about kind of what we're posting, who we're talking to, what our connections are on social media. And those down the road can actually have a really detrimental effect on us. So I think things as harmless as, like Snapchat streaks, which are one of those little features that have been designed by some data and behavioral scientists to kind of keep people hooked. It's not just a random occurrence that when you start Snapchatting someone and 3 days goes by, a little fire emoji pops up and the number starts increasing each day when you exchange Snapchats. That is specifically designed to keep you hooked. And so I think people what if you have a Snapchat streak with someone that you really shouldn't be talking to? What if it's a bad influence? What if it's a girl that your parents said, hey, I think you shouldn't talk to that girl? Well, if the streak starts going and expanding and going down the drain, you start to feel like you're pressured to keep the streak alive. And I know kind of crazy examples of this, like people going abroad and not having Wi-Fi and like giving their Snapchat account to people to keep their streaks alive. I think that's kind of a social media at its worst. We're letting social media control us there, and ultimately it can lead to bad decisions. Now, some other examples of bad ways of using social media. Obviously, it can be used for criminal enterprises. I mean, criminals can look up people, they can figure out people's information, they can hack into it, they can figure out someone's address, they can rob people. So there's obviously the criminal stuff, but even on kind of a more, what on the surface seems harmless, we can just waste a lot of time on social media. Remember, it can be used in a very addictive way because of the measures that people have put in. Sometimes, and I think this is a negative thing, people can derive a lot of value from their social media profiles. And this goes back to another thing about social media, in that at its worst, it really just presents images of people and not their actual selves. So we need to break through kind of and understand people better through social media. I mean, it's a great tool to get to know people, to meet new people, but I think we all know that our best friends are not people that we just interact with on social media. We also interact with them in person. We talk to them, we do things with them. And I think it's important to think about, well, if social media is just kind of an image of someone, then yeah, we should obviously take it with a grain of salt. I think too often people can be prideful or vain or immature, or they want to kind of create a social media image. You hear about this a lot. People kind of have a social media presence and then it doesn't actually connect to their real life. And I think that can have a lot of really negative effects on people. Mental health issues. You hear about people that, yeah, really suffer because their social media presence is not who they are as a person, and they kind of actually really fundamentally can't come to terms with that disconnect, but they feel like they have to put out an image to cater to people's interests or to peer pressure or to whatever it might be. So I think it's good to think about, well, my image on social media, yeah, it's a good thing in the sense of I want to hold myself to a high standard, but I also don't want to judge people just purely based on their social media profile or their pictures or whatever it might be. Because I think then we kind of fall into, again, not really delivering on authentic human connection, which is an important thing. So ultimately, I hope I've laid out kind of how we can look at social media and its good and bad uses, which ultimately, let's keep in mind, stem from our ability to use it prudently. And so it has to be kind of, we have to keep this image of we need to be in the driver's seat. And using prudence, we can really drive social media forward, and we can use it as a good tool, as a way to build friendships, as a way to connect with our friends in the kind of this time of uncertainty when we're probably all locked at home and not really going outside and seeing friends. Or we can kind of let social media drive us around and impede our judgment, kind of let its most addictive features drive us towards bad ends. All these kind of things that might be negatives can be positives if we just change our mindset and frame it differently. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, it comes down to our ability to use social media effectively and with virtue, which is something that we really aspire for here at the Grade. Keeping in mind the pillars of the Grade, we want to be good fathers, good friends, good citizens, good professionals. Part of that is having people respect us because we kind of hold ourselves to a higher standard. And so I think it's good to think about, well, what are the kind of things I'm promoting on social media or posting that anyone might see? What are my privacy settings? Do I have any idea of who's looking at my profile, who's looking at my pictures, my posts? I might think a meme is funny and I might think it's okay to share it privately with my friends, but if I'm posting it publicly and people can see it, is that presenting a good image of myself, of my family, of my school? I think these are all things that we should be keeping in mind about social media. And obviously it can be a very negative thing down the road when maybe potential colleges or employers, and there are plenty of stories like this, when people look at a potential student or potential employee's social media profiles and get immediately the wrong image. Because what do people do when they hear about you? Well, oftentimes nowadays they look you up and they figure out, okay, well, who is this person? So it's very easy for people to create an image of someone, and again, that can be something that might help us if we're very kind of conscious and prudent about how we use social media and people kind of are impressed by our profile. But if our profile comes across as immature, as lacking professionalism, all those things can hamper our ability to leave a good influence on someone, and that can be a bad thing. So hopefully I've laid out a couple of different ideas about good and bad uses of social media. But again, let's take a step back and think about big picture. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to be in the driver's seat. We want to be understanding what social media is, and we want to use it prudently. We want to be able to use it to further develop authentic human connections, or to meet new people and then to get to know them better, or to, yeah, especially in this time when we're all home, we're kind of working from home, we're disconnected from our friends, to stay in touch with people. And we don't want social media to drive us. We don't want to be sitting around wasting time. We don't want to be judging people based on their profiles. We don't want to be posting immature, inappropriate things, which might come back to bite us. So I think you guys understand this fundamentally, but I think it's good to always keep in mind that we need to be in the driver's seat, and virtue fundamentally is what's going to allow us to develop a real, authentic social media profile and not something that leads to negative impacts down the road. So before we go, I just want to point out that this month for mentoring, obviously a unique situation in that you guys are going to be talking to your mentors remotely, but still an important thing, that we have an online test for you guys to take on your internet and social media profiles or uses, whatever. It's 29 questions. We came up with it here at The Grade, just true and false. And it's important that you guys complete it. We'll send it out with this video just to give you guys something really constructive and substantive to talk about in the mentoring and to ultimately create some good goals. So just remember to take the test after you watch this video. And I hope, again, you guys are all doing well, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.